Well, polls are definitely tightening as we head into the last week of the election campaign, the last weekend of the election campaign. The question is, will it matter? Does it hit the right spots where there needs to be a change, or are we just fumbling towards ecstasy for the Liberals and a Liberal majority, maybe their worst case scenario, a Liberal minority? Hi, I'm Brian Lilley, political columnist with the Toronto Sun. Joining me now to talk about all of this is Jeff Ballingall. He is with Mobilize Media. He's a campaign strategist. He's someone who continues to run third-party campaigns and help with political campaigns at various times. Jeff, polls have come much closer than I thought they would. This has been a very fluid few months. We started with a huge conservative lead. Then it became a big Liberal lead. Now they're within, it depends on which polling company you're looking at, tied or 3 to 4 points apart. Obviously, the big enchilada is Ontario. Is there enough time, enough momentum, which is clearly with the Conservatives, for them to turn this around?
I mean, it's up to you whether you believe the polls are right or wrong. And I think ultimately a swing in a few points could mean a Conservative minority, Conservative majority. Swing in the wrong direction could mean a Liberal majority. So it's a very uphill battle for the Conservatives. The math is not on their side. The collapse of the NDP means ridings that should not be in play in the 9 out of 5, in the 519 could be in play now. That said, it also opens up a lot more ridings for the Conservatives to pick up in Northern Ontario, perhaps in Windsor, certainly in British Columbia. But there's a lot of seats that the Conservatives typically might not have won from the NDP that they're going to win now. But overall, it's really tough. I mean, Pierre could get higher than 40%, have the highest popular vote of any Conservative leader, higher than when Stephen Harper won his majority in 2011. And he could still,
Highest since Brian Mulroney won a massive majority back in the 80s.
and he could still lose because the NDP are that useless.
And the Bloc as
Yeah.
well, yeah.
It's frustrating, I think, as a campaign observer who, I believe that Canada needs a strong NDP. I think they provide utility in correcting, and attacking the Liberals from the left and bringing a social conscience and talking about things in ways. And I think we need more voices. Suffice to say, we need more voices in Canadian media, whether it's parties or media, not fewer. And for the NDP to allow themselves to be relegated to this position is frankly quite sad. A lot of us, and I know you have, Brian, have called out Singh for being completely incompetent for years, and this is what we get. We get to see the NDP at 6%, and it's frustrating that the NDP are so weak, and that they didn't see this coming, and that none of their activists, none of their caucus members, none of the elder statesmen of the party have done anything but enable Singh to destroy their party. So these.
Well, let's talk about that for a minute, because the NDP support of late, obviously Pierre Poilievre had stolen some of the NDP support, especially among the remaining blue-collar workers. Let's face it, blue-collar workers in the skilled trades who make decent income had been leaving the NDP for the longest time because the NDP cares more about the faculty club than the union hall. That's been a process for the last 20 years. But what was left of the NDP coalition, much of it has just fled to, in the last couple months, to Mark Carney and the Liberals. Mark Carney is a guy who, as the chair of Brookfield Asset Management, the company owns a chain of hospitals in Australia under attack for imposing $100 a day overnight fee charges. They own a health insurance company that denies minors with black lung their health benefits. They own a pile of private health care. And this is normally something that would have progressive voters saying, oh, wait a minute, we can't back that. And they are flocking to him. I mean, don't tell me that you are the party of principle if you're going to back this guy who, supports everything that you have previously opposed, including, owning a large residential landlord company that is big into jacking up the price of rents.
The mental gymnastic that one would have to do to support Mark Carney as a socialist in this country is wild. But here we are. All that matters is that Donald Trump is bad and Mark Carney isn't Donald Trump, and that's enough for a lot of people. And frankly, the Conservatives needed to do a better job in trying to reach out to more voters, more stakeholder groups, try to broaden their base of support to make the Conservatives less scary. If they had done that, I think they would have helped the NDP shake loose a bunch of left-leaning Liberal voters who, if they're not as scared of the Conservatives, that they'll go home to the NDP. I think that's been one of the challenges of the campaign is when it's so polarized and so binary, it's hard for the NDP to have any play. And I think there was a role the Conservatives could have done to help the NDP. I mean, it's very difficult.
Then explain how, because in many ways the Conservatives have run a flawless campaign in terms of being out there. Okay, I could quibble with their messaging. Was it bring it home? Was it Canada first? Was it Canada first for a change? Was it change? There's been problems with that, but there've been no major screw ups. So what could they have done
I think
differently?
that it needs to be understood that Pierre Poilievre, he has, like any leader, has his ceiling of support. That no matter what you do, there are people that won't support you above a certain threshold in the population. So like whether it's 40% or 45, right? There's people that won't support you above that number. And as I've said, it's incredibly challenging. This is not an easy election. The Conservatives, as we talked about, could win the highest popular vote they've ever had and still lose and have a Liberal majority. But I think there are things they could have done better. I think they could have used the team more. I think they could have used surrogates more. I think they could have shown themselves with women beyond just, they did a great job using Anna Poilievre. But I think there's members of the team, whether it's Michelle Rempel, whether it's Melissa Landsman. These are members that could have been highlighted more. All these things could have brought in Pierre's appeal and made him and the Conservatives less scary. And I think that by doing that could have shaken loose a bunch of NDP voters who now would feel comfortable voting NDP instead of going to the Liberals.
So, look, we're talking on Friday just about noon. Had a great chat with Daryl Bricker, CEO of Ipsos Public Affairs. He looks after polling for the firm globally, biggest polling firm in the world. He told me two things that are of note. One, 30% at least, if not more, of all the folks that he and every other pollster are talking to won't show up to vote. So depending on how that splits out, that could change the outcome. Secondly, he said increasingly people make up their minds, and this is a global phenomenon that they've tracked around the world, he says. Increasingly people make up their minds in the last 72 hours. They're not as devoted to party as they once were. And so in the last couple days, they're like, okay, where am I going to go? What am I going to do? And 5 to 10% make up their mind in the last day. They wake up in the morning, they make up their mind, or they're headed to the polling place, or they're at the polling place, and then they're like, you know what, I'm going to go with this guy. Should Conservatives put any stock or hope in that? Because, look, I'm closer to the 55 plus group. I'm not in the 55 plus group that we know is leaning towards the Liberals. I'm Gen X, and I'm not going for the Liberals. Anyone that watches me knows that. But, if younger voters show up, if that 5 to 10% changes their mind to them, that could have a huge impact on what we expect right now versus what the actual outcome is.
Certainly, and I think there's polling errors, there's blind spots that they're missing, right? Like if a bunch of young people that typically don't vote start voting, that could swing the election wildly. Like we could be in for a major surprise on Monday night. That said, maybe there's a lot of boomers who typically don't vote and they vote Liberal, and I think there's a lot of. I worry that the Conservative base is active, they're engaged, they're loud, they're fired up, they're going to rallies, they're active on social media. That's all great. I think that's an important part of the Conservative coalition and the Conservative election strategy. That said, I worry about the retired couple in Peterborough, retired teachers, full pensions, that won't post on social media, that consume CBC radio, and that's it. And we know they're going to vote. And if enough of those couples are across the country, it could be a really bad night on Monday night. So I frankly don't know. I wish I had a better answer. There's just too many variables going on.
Yeah. Well, Well, in that same interview I did with Bricker when I was filling in on News Tech Talk 1010 in Toronto the other day, he basically said there's anything from a conservative minority to a huge liberal majority at play. He doesn't see a world where there's a conservative majority, neither do I. Most likely outcome is some type of liberal win, but there's still a possibility for the conservatives, but only if people show up. So what's your message to younger
I think
voters?
that's really important, and I think that's what's going to matter in the next few hours. We're recording this on Friday morning. It's going to have to be vote, vote, vote over the next few days. A lot of door knocking. They got to make sure that the Conservatives need to make sure that their voter ID is clean. I've heard concerns that people are going off old data when Trudeau was Prime Minister, and I think a lot of that is out the window. So that is another challenge for the Conservatives, is that they've done so much great work over the last few years identifying vote. But if that vote is fluid, they could end up being polling vote for Mark Carney, people who've switched their votes. So
I remember talking to people who worked the 2015 campaign, and they would show up to homes that at the beginning of the campaign, remember that campaign started August 2nd and ended mid-October. And the vote ID had been for the Conservatives in swing ridings in early August, and then they're showing up to poll the vote at the middle of October at the end of the campaign, and there's suddenly a liberal sign on the lawn, and the person saying, "Oh yeah, I'm voting still. Don't worry,
Yeah.
not for you."
Yeah, and that's a challenge. I mean, credit to the Conservatives, they've done an incredible job in framing the election as best they can on their issues of affordability and need for a change. I think that's an incredible part, and that's their closing argument. Credit to them again. During the leaders' debates, Trump didn't come up that much. That's a huge win. So it's ultimately what's going to happen is, what are people going to remember when they vote? Is it going to be a vote for change, or is it a vote with Donald Trump, on their shoulder, whispering in their ear to vote for Mark Carney? That is ultimately going to be the question on Monday. There's lots of lessons to be learned from this election. I don't think the Liberals have run a particularly good campaign, aside from a few good moments. But Mark Carney is straight from central casting. He even if everyone that knows his record or his policies know that he's just going to be worse than Justin Trudeau. But to a lot of people, he's a feel-good choice. He's got a good CV. He looks the part. He's enough of a change from Trudeau that people feel safe. And that might be enough to win him a majority government. We all know the wheels will fall off quickly in that scenario, and I think it'll be a Kathleen win scenario where he ekes out a win like the Liberals did in 2014 here in Ontario, and then ultimately they get destroyed in 2018. I think that's something we could see here, but Lord knows I hope that's not the case.
All right, Jeff, we'll talk again soon, especially after Monday.
Yeah,
thanks for the time. Let us know what you think. Drop a comment down below. Share this on social media. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel.